The pages whisper secrets from the past. A manuscript lies before us, filled with unknown script and baffling illustrations, fantastical plants that botanists can't recognize, constellations that don't match our night sky, and an enigmatic woman wading through the interconnected pools of water. This is an ancient book, both mesmerizing and mystifying, that has dodged comprehension for centuries. You're listening to Casual History. Hello everyone, welcome back to Casual History. My name is Jeffrey. I'm here once again with my co-host, Jacob.
As always.
We are some casual historians for those who are new. We love bringing in new subjects each week. We trade back and forth, trying to teach each other things, and hopefully those who listen something new each week. And so that means this week is my turn. And
That's right.
Hopefully by that cold intro and that little hook I left you with, you're intrigued. Are you intrigued, Jacob?
I am, man. It's always super mysterious when you do your intros. This is actually something that I've seen a post about. We were kind of talking off pod about this, but this is something that I've actually heard a little bit about or seen like a little post like written down about this actual manuscript. So I'm excited to dive right in.
Yeah, there's a lot to get into. There's not too much to touch on from last week or kind of things around casual history. I know Jacob's been working on some designs for t-shirts, which look pretty cool.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll share some of that this coming week before his next episode. But we're kind of settling back in from being away for a week or two that kind of stopped us, but we're back in and we're starting again. So I found this story online. It's something that I've known about just abstractly and vaguely, nothing that I actually took time to look into. But it's really, really interesting. I think mainly because I'm interested in the mystery and the possibility of conspiracy that lies here.
I think that's the thread of all my podcasts too.
Yeah.
It's always like tinged with like, hey, could this be a conspiracy? Is there something like bigger at play here? I love those kind of stories.
Yeah, and it's always fun to think about in that context. So you can pick your role if you're listening, whether you want to be a skeptic or you want to be as wild and outlandish as I typically am in believing some of these stories. But I can jump right in if you're ready.
Yeah, let's do it, man. Let's go.
Okay, so I'm going to set the scene, and then we'll get into the meat of it. So,
all right.
In the vaults of Yale University's rare book and manuscript library rests a book that's so enigmatic that it has eluded interpretation for over a century, inviting the scrutiny of cryptanalysts, historians, and scholars from all corners of the globe. As you walk through the pristine, temperature-controlled environment of the library, your attention is inevitably drawn to this particular manuscript, sitting in a glass display, untouched by the modern world, but radiating an aura of deep mystery. The Voynich Manuscript is what we're talking about today. It's named after Wilfrid Voynich, who was a Polish book dealer that ended up acquiring it in 1912. But this manuscript dates back to the early 15th century, if not older. And it, on the cover, you don't judge a book by its cover. It looks modest. It measures around 23.5 by 16.2 centimeters. But what it contains on the inside is anything but modest. It spans about 240 pages, and this manuscript is written in an unknown script that is unique to this book alone. And to this day, despite efforts from some of the best code breakers and linguists, no one has been able to decipher the language or intent behind the illustrations and language that it's showing on the pages. And it's not just the script, Jacob, that puzzles researchers. The Voynich Manuscript's illustrations are equally bewildering and wild. The pages are filled with drawings of unidentified plants, astronomical and astrological diagrams that don't match our world that we know. Naked women in curious tubs connected by an intricate network of pipes. So plumbing.
Wow. Okay.
Recipes with unknown ingredients. And the illustrations are both vibrant and detailed that seem to follow some sort of logical sequence. So they're not some haphazard, it doesn't seem to be some haphazard diary of some lunatic, right? That's just writing and scribbling and drawing. There
Wait.
seems to be a method or you know, when you're writing a book like 1 through 5, you're able to count to 5 and it seems to make sense. Like it follows some sort of logic. And
Interesting.
all of the contents inside remain a mystery.
Wow,
How
dude.
does that sit with you real quick? And I'll keep going, but how does that sit with you off the
No,
top?
dude, that's okay. So that's very interesting because I've seen little like pictures of it, but the fact
We'll
that
post some.
my first instinct was like there's some old man playing the best prank on the world right now, like back in that time, just like, hey, I'm gonna write a book in gibberish language. Um, but it has to be rooted in something if it's readable. So very,
Mm-hmm.
very intriguing that we don't know, like even the core. Like usually linguists are really good at like finding, okay, what is this like based out of at least? So you can kind of piece
Right.
together little tiny segments.
Right.
So that kind of blows my mind. Number one, that we still haven't, and we've discovered like ancient Sumerian like languages and
Right.
stuff like that through that practice. And so that strikes
Right.
me immediately as odd. The plant life though, why am I more intrigued that there's like plants in there that I've never heard of? Um, but what's with the lady in the tub? How does that connect to
Exactly.
plants
Right.
and how does this all work
We'll
together?
dive in. We're gonna dive into each of these a little bit
Okay.
separately. Each of the types of illustrations and the language that's on the inside, or code rather, however you want to view it.
Right.
A little bit later on. But yeah, it
So
sets the
interesting.
stage for a really good mystery and a really good thought provoking. I don't know. It was inspirational a bit too for me because it just makes me want to deep dive into this whole history of this book.
Yeah.
Um, and there's some interesting characters that have held on to this book that you're going to recognize, I think, Jacob. We might have,
Oh no.
I want you to look up a few names when we do,
Okay.
um, because again, it begs questions for me at least.
Yeah.
Um, but
This is
I'll keep rolling.
yeah, I was about to
Um,
say like this is literally like the reason why I think we started this podcast because I love stories like this. Like I like the mystery. I like discovering something that like people still have not found out about and like speculating wildly. So
yeah,
this is great. Let's go
yeah.
ahead.
Again, for those listening, I apologize if this opens more questions than answers, but there's a lot of really interesting details and things to get into about this manuscript that I think, if you're intrigued so far, I think this might help some people get some peace at night or around it. But there's
Some
still
sleep.
so many things we don't know. Um, but on that subject alone, many have speculated, obviously, about its origins. Was it a work of a lone genius?
Mm,
Maybe it's an ancient scientist recording his observations, or perhaps a guidebook to the medieval unknown, a representation of the world beyond common understanding? Question mark. Or as
question mark?
some skeptics suggest, could it be an elaborate hoax crafted
Mm,
to baffle and mislead? Determined experts have approached the manuscript using modern techniques that for those who are kind of in this world, are probably familiar with, such as carbon dating to computational analysis. And through these means, we've learned a little bit, but not a lot, about its background. The vellum
interesting.
pages have been dated to the early 15th century. That's for one. The
Okay.
ink shows no signs of being modern in any way or a modern forgery. Additionally, the linguist's patterns within the text suggest it might be conveying genuine information and not just gibberish. So,
Mm,
based on again the analysis of the text and the words, experts who know what this means way more than I do
yeah.
have a generalized agreement that it seems to be conveying something, that it's not just someone writing random letters and whatever symbols to make up some sort of fake language, right?
Dude,
Which
this is the best prank ever.
Right, if it is. But here's where the story gets even more intriguing. The provenance of the Voynich Manuscript, its ownership trail can be traced back to Emperor Rudolf II of the Holy Roman Empire, who believed at the time that the work to be guess who, Jacob? Do you want to take a guess? No?
No,
Okay.
there's no way I'm gonna guess it.
English philosopher Roger Bacon. Type in that name right now
Oh,
in Google, Jacob.
Roger
You can mute
Bacon.
yourself. I'll
Okay.
keep going. I want you to look and type that in if you're listening as well. Take a look at who Roger Bacon is. So, throughout the centuries, it has changed hands multiple times, being owned by alchemists, scholars, scientists, each drawn into its puzzle, but leaving without answers. And so today, as we delve deep into this perplexing artifact, we're going on a journey, one that spans centuries and disciplines, in search of the true essence of the Voynich manuscript. What stories does it hold? Why has it baffled experts for so long? And are we any closer today to deciphering its true nature? Strap in, Jacob. This is a tale of one of the world's most confounding unsolved mysteries. Now, the Voynich manuscript isn't just a singular puzzle, but a collection of them. Each page presents its own array of questions. For historians, it's a treasure trove of enigma, and we begin with its most striking feature, the language. But before we do that, Jacob, did you look up bacon?
Yes, I
And what did you
did.
find?
And the most interesting thing is the first thing that popped up is he was regarded as a wizard, particularly famed for a story of his mechanical or necromantic brazen head. I hope I'm saying that right.
That's
But what the
insane.
heck? Who is this man? He was a Franciscan friar who
Franciscan friar.
placed considerable emphasis on the study of nature. So interesting. So,
Wow.
man, I love these kind of people in history. The fact that
Well, that's a
like he
conspiracy
must have
for
been
you.
such a genius that they thought he was a wizard. They thought he was actually doing magic.
Which I wish my biography or autobiography. What is it when you die? Is it autobiography?
I, I I think so. I think that's an
I hope
autobiography.
it
Yeah.
reads similarly to what you just described as Mr. Bacon.
You want to be known as a wizard? Is that what you're
Yes.
trying to tell us?
100%. Who doesn't? If you don't, I
That'd be
judge
pretty
you
awesome.
I'm kind of shocked.
Put that on my
Um,
tombstone.
Yeah.
Want to be wizard?
Well, one of the things that you need to have when you're a wizard, Jacob, do you know what it is? A secret language, and that's what we're about to dive into.
Ooh.
So
Okay.
the
Let's
language,
do
you
it.
like that? You like that turnaround, did you?
Yes, I did. That was a great segue. Good job.
So the language and script. There's no known alphabet that corresponds to the script of the Voynich manuscript. And it's not just that the language is unknown, but that the very letters used are unique. There are over 170,000 glyphs within the book, condensed into what appears to be a vocabulary of 20 to 30,000 words, so a small range. It's a very
Wow.
extensive vocabulary, larger than that of Shakespeare's entire works. And this suggests that it's not just a simple code, but rather a fully formed yet undeciphered language. Statistical analysis has shown that the text follows linguistic patterns consistent with natural languages. And so that it sort of leads you to believe that this isn't just a jumble, but there's a structure within the book. So that's number one.
Interesting. So what is this thing trying to tell us? Number one. Number two,
Right.
I immediately just thought of like, sorry, not to go on a side tangent here, but like just thinking throughout history, who has tried to make up their own language? First of all, pretty ambitious, number one. But number two, like I immediately thought of like twins. Like, what if the person who made this was a twin and that was their like twin language? And that like somehow has a solution to all this. There's so many options that my rabbit holes my brain goes down right now.
I am with you. And you know, one of the rabbit holes that I went down,
What?
at least in thought, was the name Bacon, right? We've talked about bacon before.
I love bacon.
And if
Bacon's
this claim of when this book was supposedly written was true, 15th century is when they can mark it back to, that would line up, Jacob, with
Yeah.
Shakespeare and the Baconian theory,
Is this
which
the same Bacon?
I don't know that it's see, this is where it gets hazy, and I'm not trying to pretend to anybody listening or to you that I know this.
You're just
But
trying to say this was Shakespeare.
what I'm trying to say is it not odd that
Mm.
the claim that they supposedly, or I believe there's a cipher and or a claim they followed, which we'll get into, that leads them to believe, along with carbon dating, that this was made in the 15th century. Okay.
Okay.
There also, which we already know, and what I mentioned, was that this book, excuse the fire truck in the background if you can hear that. You love New York City as I'm going
Gotta
on a
love it.
rant. But the Bacon, shoot, what's his first name? I just told you his first name, and I just
You said
lost it.
Francis Bacon, but we're talking about Roger Bacon here.
Roger Bacon, correct. Two separate Bacons. But if they're of the same time period, could they be related?
I don't know. Was Francis Bacon a pseudonym as well?
Listen, I'm not pretending to have a fully fleshed out thought here, other
Okay.
than the connections to me are a bit odd. That the time frame matches up with the Shakespeare.
Okay.
You know, Shakespeare was late 15th he was born, I believe, supposedly in the late 15th century into 1612, I think. So just an idea out there that seemed to be odd. And then I know we've discussed this, and I won't deep dive too far. Okay, I'll stop after this next thing.
No, go for it, man. I love it.
The Baconian theory being that it was, remember that it was really Francis Bacon that was the genius behind Shakespeare, and that it was the whole conspiracy, which we already dove into in the other podcast.
Right.
It just seemed odd that the next greatest mystery in linguistics and language, and almost a bit fanciful, you know, play like ideas within the, you know, the illustrations. Maybe there's a genius of books, you know, at that time period, that maybe this was his journal. Maybe this was whoever. I don't know. I'm gonna stop
That's
there.
a wild journal, man. Just drawing women in tubs connected by
yeah, right.
like the stories that you just described. Yeah, I also want to know, where does Kevin Bacon fit in all this? You said fanciful. I almost heard footwork.
Yeah, you almost heard footwork. Yeah, long lost great grandson or whatever, however many greats you need there. But that was just a thought I found interesting. Okay, don't hold me to it if you're listening.
I like it.
You as well. But the second piece that we didn't touch on so far is the illustrations, right? So equally baffling are the drawings that populate the manuscript. There's a botanical section filled with the depictions of 113 unidentified species of plants. And these are over, and while some are, excuse me, I lost my thought there. While some are reminiscent of real plants, others seem entirely fantastical. And then there's the astronomical section, containing circular diagrams that hint at some understanding of the cosmos. But they don't match any known configurations of stars, planets from any culture.
Really?
And the biological section depicts naked women, most with swollen bellies, bathing in pools or tubs connected by an intricate system of pipes. What do you, I mean, again, all you can say is what?
And a wide range of interests for this man, whoever he was, or a woman, whoever it was.
Whoever wrote this. And so the speculation is, are these early depictions of medical procedures, symbolic representations, or perhaps a kind of proto spa, right? Like what's the thing that they're trying to get across here?
Yeah, I'm also interested about the plant, like botanical section there.
Right.
Just because I don't know well enough to know a time period, but I know that like the earth has gone through several, like, I guess they call it like the great, like they have a name for it, but basically where a bunch of the like Earth's fauna dies. And so I don't know if that's like, obviously this is talking about the 1400s, or that's when they theorize that this book came from,
15th century. Yeah, yeah,
or 15th
exactly.
century. Yep. So like it makes it very interesting to me that like, I mean, I'm sure there were plants that existed that may have died out since then, but 100 in some so odd like that amount seems kind
Right.
of wild to me. That like there's no connection whatsoever.
The thing that strikes me too is at least how it's been written about so far, and even looking at the pages, which we're gonna post some photos for people who are interested listening. If you don't look it up yourself or Google it, but is that they all seem reminiscent, but there's no one quite match, right? There's no like match that we can decipher that this is this plant, right?
Right.
But they're all reminiscent. So they're like someone's vague idea of like seeing the world around them and then creating their own world, right? So could this be a work of fiction? That's what I
Huh.
thought about too, which was like, is this a one of your favorite like magic books that they wrote, like right, with
Right.
their own language, and maybe I don't know. It's interesting.
Interesting.
It just brings up more questions. I think that is something that I found interesting reading the descriptions of this book manuscript, is that everyone does seem to take it seriously in the way of again, Shakespeare, Shakespeare's writing things that are fantastical. They're based
Right.
in real emotions, obviously, and their longevity, but they're writing fantastical. I'm curious why, at least from everything I've seen, and maybe there's people can lead me into the direction of people writing about this manuscript in a way that views it similarly than to that, but they all seem to make this case that it's something real, that it's something like it's hard facts, that this is a real language supposedly from the linguists that they can tell.
Right.
I don't know. Like the assumption isn't that it's a fake whimsical book that we just don't understand because it's someone's half
That's so much
idea.
effort.
Right. Yeah. There just seems to be so much effort behind it that it seems to make you want to take it seriously.
Yeah, that is so interesting. As well as just for clarity, which you've probably already stated this, but you're telling me that like those writings of the actual like plants and stuff are like a scientist like is previewing and like breaking down the different parts of like just an unknown plant.
Right. It seems to be
Like
like
it's like a scientific.
right. If you pull it up, you can do this too while I get into the next one. But if you want to pull open a photo of one of the plants, you'll see it's like if you had a journal and you drew the plant and then you had writing, and you were like describing it. I don't know, maybe it's a medicine book of how to use the plant, however you want to interpret it. But
Wow.
um, while the Voynich manuscript's allure is undeniable, it hasn't been without skeptics, obviously.
Of course.
Over the years, some have questioned its authenticity, and one of the most prevalent theories in that camp suggests that the manuscript might be a hoax or a carefully constructed riddle with no real solution. And
Hmm.
some believe it was created purely for financial gain as a rare artifact that could fetch a hefty sum. And that would be really, I think that's a cynical approach, but it's not a bad approach. Could it be that the entire manuscript is a well crafted work of gibberish designed to fool centuries of scholars and kings?
Man, that seems like a really tall task. I think I
But if
personally
you're
like
broke, you have nothing but time.
right. If you're
Am I
broke, man,
wrong?
you're like, I mean, you don't you're not wrong. But I think that is such effort. You're talking about creating a language and not just gibberish. You're not writing down gibberish. Like that's probably what could have fooled somebody. I'm thinking 1400s. People were smart, but like you're talking about how many people were like linguists who knew all the languages of the world. Like I could have probably wrote anything in that book, just made up symbols and tried to sell that for like a
Right.
quick buck or something. You're talking about something that certainly has some sort of rhyme and reason, or at least according to the research that's been done by
Yeah.
experts in this field. And so
Right.
that's what's pulling me into like that.
So you're not the skeptic this one. You're kind of a
Yeah,
believer, huh? Okay.
I kind of feel like this is somewhat real. Like again, like it leans me towards that this thing was real in some capacity.
Based on the effort that it would take, and also maybe the skill level that you would need to have, maybe it
Yeah,
suggests a genius, maybe it suggests a well read or well like educated person at the time, which also would again kind of lead you to believe maybe if you're well educated and you've been through maybe they're maybe they're a king's son who didn't have anything to do and he just wanted to like I don't know, who knows, there's so many
Right.
potential reasons that this could be made, but obviously the
Yeah.
skeptics have a really strong case in my opinion, one of them being Gordon Rugg. He's a researcher at Keele University, and he proposed that the manuscript could have been created using a Cardin grill. I probably butchered how you say that, but it's a tool essentially that's used to create ciphers. And by this
Oh.
method, one could feasibly produce a vast amount of text that seems meaningful, but it's purely random. And if it's true, the manuscript could have been a medieval get rich quick scheme deceiving potential buyers with its mystique, excuse me.
Well, that story kind of bums me out. It's still interesting, but that story, if
What
that was true, that would kind of bum me out a little bit. If
Right,
someone
but
just
here's the
like,
thing. There's always reasons not to believe something. There's always things that
that's true.
people could say Shakespeare again, there's a whole reason, there's a whole theory that Shakespeare alone didn't write Shakespeare. You know, like because when something
Yeah.
is so grand or great, there's bound to be questions and who knows, man. I know that's such a lame answer is like who knows, but I don't know. I do kind of lean. I'm a bit in the center. I think if either way, it's still impressive personally
Yeah.
because I'm thinking I admire the hustle if it's fake because damn, this thing is crazy. Like
Yeah.
that's I props to you. You know me. I'm a schemer. I love that shit. This is great. If it's
Yeah,
real,
no.
it's still just as insane.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel like I want to like lean towards believing that there's some like real semblance to this. But
Right.
again, like I want to do the research myself, but that's what's so intriguing about this is like you're right. I guess it could fit both kind of theories. Um and I immediately thought the exact same thing as you. I'm like, let's think about the education level that would be required to do something like this to achieve this. Now, would
Hmm.
that person be hurting for money? Would that person does that not matter? Maybe this was a certain situation. I also think us as humans, we have a tendency to believe that we know everything. Um, we have that kind of grandeur sometimes, and
Hmm.
so like this could have been a one-off situation with a genius who just happened to write this down, not knowing what the consequences are of like other people discovering it. And you're right, like a get quick scheme, or
Yeah.
it could be something where again, like we just don't know all the facts, even though we think we do, and there's some alterations. And so both of those sides intrigue me. Either
Yeah.
way, I want to know who did this and where the heck did this come from? Because if it's real, that's wild. If it's not, like I need to know the man who did this because that's awesome.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna dive into. Well, let's just go ahead and do it before we hit the ad break. But obviously, the counter argument to that off the bat is going to be highlights, or the counter argument, excuse me, is that the manuscript is consistent with linguistic patterns, which we've already discussed,
Right.
and it obviously is genuine ancient materials. So it's obviously from an older time period, which argues against it being a purposeful fraud. And so, how did such a mysterious book come into being? While we don't know the exact origins, we can trace parts of its journey based on who owned it at different periods of time. And so, records suggest that the manuscript once belonged to who I've already mentioned, Emperor Rudolph II, who reigned from 1576 to 1612. Now, a
Wow.
bit behind Emperor Rudolph, because to me, I go, okay, who had it? What symbol of importance did they have? Were they connected to it? But essentially, Emperor Rudolph was during the late 16th and early 17th centuries in Prague under the reign of Rudolph II became a melting pot of alchemy, the arts, and occult. And so Rudolph's court attracted scholars, artists, and alchemists at the time. And the emperor was particularly interested in anything esoteric and collected many artifacts and curiosities. And
Mm,
so, a possible integration into this book was while we don't know the exact origins, we can trace parts of his journey. And the passage through Emperor Rudolph II's hands could be seen as significant, right? Remember, this was a time when Prague was a hub of alchemic and occult pursuits. And with Rudolph's court drawing the brightest and most mysterious of minds, it could lend an air of realness to it. Again, if you're thinking all these
Right.
people at the time were into this sort of thing and they were bringing about the most true and, you know, arts of works of art, that if this came along, did this really fool everyone at that time as well? Maybe.
Yeah.
And
And it
so,
sounds like you have a perfect sucker to sell this to if you were going the other way.
right, you have a perfect, again, you see an opportunity and you go, this is where I need to go sell this thing that is
Right.
gibberish to someone who
To a
is in
king
love with
who's
this stuff.
very
And
interested in all of these things.
yeah, he was known for his fascination with arcane and alchemical. Wait, alchemic? Same
Yes,
thing.
I know what you mean. Yes.
Um, the word just
Alchemic,
stumbled
yes.
me, but he reportedly purchased the manuscript for 600 gold ducats, believing it to be a work of Roger Bacon. So that's where we first get
Okay.
the name Roger Bacon, is because he believed he was buying it from Roger Bacon, not from him, but it was believed that he was the author. And so Roger Bacon
Interesting.
is a 13th century English Franciscan friar and scholar. And so, if
Right.
true, this would place the manuscript's origins much earlier than the carbon dating suggests. And so, again, if you're a skeptic, you're going, that was
The story
a
doesn't line up.
line, that was a line to sell the emperor on it. And if you're a believer, you go, the carbon dating's wrong. And you know, up to you what to believe. But Roger Bacon, for just a little bit of backstory on him, was a medieval philosopher who advocated for the scientific method long before it became widely accepted in the Western world. He dabbled in various fields from optics to linguistics, and even had some controversial views on astrology. Kind of pins him as a good man here. Um,
Right.
now the belief from Emperor Rudolph that it was to be a work of Roger Bacon wasn't plucked from thin air. Bacon was, in many ways, a precursor to the Renaissance thinkers dabbling in a myriad of scientific fields. And so, if the manuscript is genuinely his, it might reflect his groundbreaking and sometimes controversial views. So, it
Hmm.
does sort of set up, that story does lend itself to,
Right.
it could be true, you know, whether the person who's selling Emperor
Listen, I
goes,
don't
oh no,
blame
it's
any
this
king that
guy's.
wants to buy. Right. No, I don't blame any emperor that wants to buy a book from a supposed wizard. I would too. Listen, if
I
that was
mean, you
me,
never
I'd
know
be
what
like,
he's
I
got up his
trust you. And
sleeve, you
you're
know?
right. All this stuff kind of does line up to all of his interests and the stuff that he has actually done or he's been
Yeah,
accredited with doing. And so that does make it very mysterious that it literally could be from him. But you're saying that there's more evidence that there's,
right.
past people beyond that who had this book.
Right. Well, I'm going to present and then, you know, maybe
Okay.
we can kind of come to some conclusions and thoughts at the end because there's quite a bit. I'm trying to present the story too of how it follows. It's, you know, how we've
Right.
come to know about it today. Um, and obviously, if it's speculated that the manuscript is genuinely Bacon's, it could contain, in a new light, right, how we're looking at it, that these were his observations and experiments, some of which might have been ahead of his time, which would explain some of the odd illustrations. However, no solid evidence connects Bacon to the manuscript yet.
Hmm.
And so, following
Interesting.
that journey, the manuscript then somehow found its way to Jacobus Horkicki de Penez, an
You got this.
alchemist from Prague,
Okay.
which explains me having a hard time there. I'm sorry. His
Yes.
name was discovered on one of the manuscript's pages, faint but legible. So it's like you check out a library book and you put your name in there.
Oh,
Um, his
wow.
name was
That's wild.
discovered by ultraviolet light, which I thought was pretty
That's
cool.
dope.
Modern
That's pretty
science.
dope.
And so by the 17th century, it was in the hands. Again, that's how we found out it was Jacobus at one point. And then we move on to the 17th century. It ends up in the hands of George Beresh, another Prague um, person who's an alchemist at the time, who was just as perplexed by the manuscript as we are today, and even wrote about it. Basically, which there's a line here that I can't translate, but it translates to, I have never heard that it was read by anyone, period.
Wow.
Which I understand, George, we're just as confused.
We're just as confused over here, guys.
But before we jump into the next section, consider this, listener and Jacob. In a
Yes.
world before the internet, before the printing press, and the vast stretches of human knowledge yet to be mapped, the Voynich Manuscript was an outlier. Its next guardian that we're going to get into, Athanasius Kirch, a Jesuit priest who was a polymath and studied everything from Egyptology to volcanology, he claimed to have deciphered the Egyptian hieroglyphs. Though later scholars would find out his translations incorrect, nevertheless,
Oh.
his genuine fascination for languages, scripts, makes this encounter with the Voynich manuscript intriguing, which we're going to get into.
Yeah,
The
man. I
attempt to
can't wait.
decode such a manuscript is obviously on everyone's mind. Drawing upon the vast network of connections, like all before him, he'd find himself ensnared in its enigma, setting the stage for the manuscript's journey into the modern era. And now,
Wow.
a word from our sponsor, Jacob, who read the ad break that we're gonna play right now. We'll see you on the other side. All right. Thanks for listening to that ad. It helps support the podcast. It helps support me and Jacob figure out who wrote this damn manuscript. And I have
Yes.
something to tell you, Jacob, and I'm sorry.
Oh no. What? Why are you apologizing?
We're not going to jump into Athanasius Kirch's discovery that he was wrong because there's not much to tell. I just used that as a hook
okay.
to hopefully get the listener back because there's even more
Wow.
interesting stuff to get into.
Did you just bait and switch us?
I kind of baited and switched you.
Wow. Rude.
But hey, you know what? You're here now. You might as well listen because there's so much more to get into.
Okay.
I wanted to dive into the whole name of the manuscript itself, Voynich, and the man who found it, which is
Okay.
Wilfrid Voynich, and essentially bring it into the modern era and how we're dealing with this manuscript and why we're so confused now. So obviously tracing through the history of who owned it, we lead ourselves into Wilfrid. And it would be some time before the manuscript made its way into the modern discourse. Its next major guardian would be the one and only Wilfrid Voynich, for whom
Okay.
it takes its current name. Born as Michael Habdank Wojnitz in the Russian Empire, you like that?
Great
And
names.
later naturalized to the UK and USA, Voynich was not just a book dealer, but a man of intrigue. He was antiquarian and revolutionary, associated with significant political movements in Poland at the time. And in 1912, Voynich stumbled upon the manuscript in the Jesuit college at Frascati near Rome. Immediately recognizing its potential significance, he acquired it, bringing the manuscript out from its shadows and into the world of academic and public scrutiny. Voynich dedicated a significant part of his life trying to decipher it, seeking expertise from the brightest minds at the time, and his commitment to the mysteries reignited global interest into the manuscript. His discovery of the manuscript was no mere chance either. Wilfrid had a keen eye for the unique and valuable. Often scouting various locations for rare and ancient books, his interest in the Voynich manuscript wasn't purely academic. It was also a potential business venture. Throughout his possession of the manuscript, Voynich hoped to verify its authenticity and potentially its authorship by Roger Bacon, which would significantly increase its value. Despite his efforts and consultations with experts, he couldn't crack the manuscript's code. However, his efforts weren't in vain. It's because of his discovery and promotion of the book that we now have the Voynich manuscript as one of the world's most enigmatic literary puzzles. And so as we delve deeper into the entangled web of the Voynich manuscript, we should remind yourself, Jacob, that history is as much about the people involved willing things into action as much as it is about the actual artifacts that is left behind. And so, to understand the manuscript, we need to understand the personalities that have been drawn to it over the centuries and the
Okay.
zeitgeist of the times that they lived in. In the case of the Voynich Manuscript, it has not just been a puzzle for academics or linguists, but it has spanned multiple disciplines. Why? For some of the reasons we've already just touched on, but because of its rich tapestry of illustrations and text, we can talk about the disciplines and figures that have been captivated by this document. So, starting with the late 20th century, a period marked by groundbreaking advances in technology, obviously the birth of modern cryptography.
Yeah, you nailed it.
Cryptography.
Cryptography.
I can't wait for AI to get hold of this thing if it
Oh,
already
I was
hasn't.
about to say the same thing, man. I think that would be a really big, like all ciphers, right? Like that would be my first go to for this thing. Like right now, I'd be putting all of that into an AI.
Yeah. Little side tangent. I saw a video the other day that explained how AI has been able to, they've been feeding like whale noises and
Yeah,
dolphin noises and other animal noises into an AI that is, um, again, pattern recognition, that sort of line of work.
right.
And then it's able to almost do a callback and be speaking with the animals,
You're
and that it
kidding.
won't be, excuse me, won't be long. I'm assuming over working on this for years that you'll be able to speak to animals, although at first we won't know what we're saying. But if we can mimic the patterns and the tones and the noises that through AI and
Dude.
it unlocks so much for us in the way of language. So things like this manuscript, I'm sure if there's a hint of real message behind it,
Yeah,
I think AI might have a crack at it.
dude, I can't wait to talk to my dog. It's gonna be so great. I need to
What do you
know.
want to say to your dog?
I don't know, but like I want to hear what he has to say. That's
Yeah.
and AI allows me to do that, which is pretty wild. Honestly, it's pretty mind blowing what that technology brings. But even to like past items, where again, with every like I feel like every passing decade, there's new inventions, there's new technology that comes out where like our understanding grows, and then we're able to like relook at something that maybe we had left for. Yep, there's nothing else we can do. We have no idea where this came from. Like I think AI is the perfect opportunity for us to like go back through
Yeah.
languages and like look through these things that we've been unable to decipher. Because exactly right, that is built to discern those patterns, and so
Yeah.
it's kind of like the perfect technology for that.
Yeah. Language has always interested me as much as I'm probably not the best at speaking English myself.
Same here, buddy.
Um,
Same here. Reading names on a
uh,
podcast. I thank God for you guys being forgiving. I appreciate you guys so much.
that's such a thread for us, but we don't have to get into that. But yeah, it always interests me the linguists and how that whole study and being able to decipher, like you see the Egypt hieroglyphs, and you go, someone knows what that means out there, and
Right.
that's almost heartening and inspiring in a way. Um, but to kind of touch back onto the manuscript, obviously in the modern era of cryptography, it's no surprise that this manuscript became a main focal point for cryptographers. The Cold War era, with its obsession with codes and espionage, is a good movie with Cumberbatch. I
Oh
can't
yeah.
remember what it's called. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. I know
Okay.
exactly what you're talking about.
Okay. I'll just leave that as a vague reference with
Yeah,
no
we'll just
explanation,
leave
and
that.
I'm going to
You
keep
guys
going.
know what we mean. You know what movie we're talking about.
But it's obviously during this period as well that it brought a renewed interest in the history of cryptography. And it was in this backdrop that the manuscript drew the attention of code breakers. And these weren't just hobbyists, some were real professionals who had cut their teeth decoding intricate wartime messages that had found a passion for trying to figure this thing out.
Mm,
One of those figures, William F. Friedman, a name that might sound familiar to those aware of history of American cryptography. Friedman is regarded as the father of modern cryptanalysis.
mm.
He led the team that broke Japan's purple code during World War II. Fascinatingly, he was stumped by the manuscript. Comes
Wow.
as no surprise anymore, honestly.
Yeah.
Um, Imagine the manuscript's intricacy when a mind that had broken wartime codes in the heat of battle acknowledged it's outside of his realm of complexity, and he can't touch it.
Yeah, that's
That
insane.
says
Someone in
something.
the 1400s or earlier
Yeah.
wrote this sucker and still can't figure this out.
Yeah. And from the cryptographers, obviously to historians, we come across figures who believed that the manuscript held insights into medieval practices. One being Lynn Thorndike, historian who specialized in the history of medieval science and alchemy, considered the possibility that the manuscript might hold knowledge, alchemic knowledge, although she too was puzzled by its content. And I
Hmm.
hate to be a broken record that everyone I bring up fails, but I'm
Right.
doing this to hopefully get a point across. Um, Even into the 21st century, with its remarkable progress in machine learning and artificial intelligence, the manuscript found itself under the scrutiny of algorithms recently. And the
Hmm.
belief was simple: if human minds spanning centuries couldn't crack it, perhaps machines could. And a particular team from the University of Alberta, equipped with state of the art AI algorithms, made a bold claim suggesting that the underlying script could be a form, get this, Jacob, of ancient Hebrew.
Oh, wow.
And the idea was tantalizing.
Wow, that's
Could the
wild.
manuscript be a reservoir of ancient Jewish knowledge? The digital age brought not only AI based techniques to the forefront, but a plethora of computational methods. So, scholars have used entropy analysis to gauge the randomness of the manuscript script, finding it strikingly similar to known natural languages, which we've discussed. And
Hmm.
others have employed spectral analysis, looking at the manuscript's color signatures to identify potentially faded ink or undertext. Additionally, network analysis, commonly used to decipher social networks and interconnections, has been applied to map the relationships between different glyphs in the text. And the results? A startling similarity to meaningful, structured language.
Hmm.
Others have employed, again, long story short, okay, there's been a long list of analysis that has been happening and is still continuing to happen. And it's adding insights and layers to the ongoing debate about its nature.
Wow.
Botanists, once again, have been pulled back into the corner and been intrigued primarily because of the manuscript's detailed plant illustrations. While some plants are fantastical, almost alien in their appearance, others bear semblance to real world flora. And this has led some scholars to believe that perhaps it's a catalog of extinct or rare plants. And Dr. Arthur O. Tucker, a renowned botanist, identified one of the plants to resemble the soap plant from central Mexico, which
Hmm.
is interesting um, if it is one of the plants from central Mexico, because it suggests a possible New World origin to the manuscript.
Oh. Wow, that dude, that's insane. Like I I appreciate every single like scientist and person in their respective fields trying to figure this sucker out cuz I can't wait till on a future podcast where we have to bring this up again because the great discovery's been made and we've cracked this code finally.
Yeah,
It sounds like everything that I'm hearing, again, like the believer in me is hearing, hey, like even with the like modern technology and analysis today that like this leans towards being some sort of real language.
it seems to be.
Okay.
And I hate to leave the listener in this unknown space, but I wanted to provide context and I wanted to provide up to date, as far as I know, of information in regards to where we lead off.
Right.
And that's essentially the skinny. You know, the Voynich
Wow.
Manuscript is more than just an ancient book. It's a testament to human curiosity, to our undying pursuit of knowledge and our penchant for mystery. Whether a confounding scientific journal from a forgotten genius, a brilliantly crafted hoax, or something entirely different, the manuscript stands as a relic of a time past, beckoning scholars, skeptics, casual historians, and dreamers alike. And
Man,
that's my
I love that.
podcast for today, Jake.
That's so good. That's so good, man. And honestly, I want to know what you guys think listening as well. Like, have you, first of all, have you heard of this manuscript before? Second, like what is your theory after hearing all the evidence provided like in this podcast? I want to know where you believe. Are you guys skeptics or are you guys believers? I'll probably throw up a poll on social media too because I'm very interested to see what you guys think. Because
Yeah.
this is pretty riveting. I feel like I like these kind of stories. Um, and there's something like almost slightly beautiful about even with modern day that we still haven't cracked something that seems to be so old. I think there's so much for us to learn as like humans, like that we just
Yeah.
don't know. And like, yeah, it's
There's a
easy for
lot
us
to
to think
learn
we
from
know
our
everything.
past, Jacob. That's what
Exactly.
we're doing together. We're uncovering, and we're like we're little archaeologists, mental
Yeah.
archaeologists.
Mental archaeologists. That might be a stretch, but
I don't know how I was trying to frame that in the right way, but
yeah. No, man.
yeah,
It's a beautiful thing, man. This whole podcast is about curiosity, and so I appreciate you bringing all the evidence to the table, man. This was great.
of course. We're now going to jump into our reoccurring game segment. It's a little fun thing we do every week, where at the end of our podcast, we'll have some fun, talk about some other history stories, and see if Jacob can beat me in a game of chance and guessing and history
Not likely.
knowledge. Let's jump in. Let's jump in.
Welcome back, brave time travelers, to Time Traveler Trivia. I'm Leo, your ethereal guide. Are you ready for a challenge that transcends the ages? Here's how our game works. In each round, I will regale you with 3 tales from the vast corridors of time. These tales will be strange, bewildering, and sometimes downright wacky. But here's the twist. Only one of these stories is a true piece of historical lore, while the others are clever fabrications from my ghostly imagination. Your task, to use your knowledge, intuition, and perhaps a bit of luck to discern the real historical event from the phantasmal fiction.
All right, I'm ready. Let's just hop right into round 1, Jeffrey. Let's go.
Story 1. The Whispering Walls of Egypt. Legend says that in ancient Egypt, there was a series of walls built outside Alexandria that whispered secrets about the future to those who pressed their ears close enough. Many believed the walls were blessed by the gods. Story 2. The Great Cat Massacre. In 1730s Paris, apprentices of a printing shop plotted revenge against the bourgeoisie whom they felt treated them unfairly. Their target? The neighborhood cats, which they believed were more pampered than they were. They captured and killed several of these cats in a bizarre mock trial and public execution, an event that was later termed the Great Cat Massacre. Story 3. Viking Space Program. A recently discovered Viking saga tells of a Norse chieftain, Olaf Sky Voyager, who aimed to reach the stars. Using a massive catapult and a ship made of lightweight wood and bird feathers, he supposedly attempted to launch himself into the heavens.
Wow, all of those are incredible. First of all, yeah.
Yeah.
So, Whispering Walls of Egypt, the Great Cat Massacre, and the Viking Space Program. I wouldn't call it a space program. You put yourself on a on a catapult.
I would call it a Viking shaman, a little bit with too much shamanism in his system, if you know what I mean.
He might have been drinking a little bit too much to think he could
trying to get
fly.
Catapulted into the sky. Probably not going to work out for you, bud.
Dude, what's
I have
with
a guess
history
already.
Do you? Okay.
I do.
Well, what's your guess? Because I already have a semblance of one as well.
Okay, cool. So we can speak about it openly.
Yes.
Just because I feel like, not just because, from what I understand, the Egypt one is probably true in the way of not that it actually gave advice on the future, but I think there probably was a belief that certain walls were blessed and it would be like a ritualistic thing. That's gonna be my guess. The massacre seems real enough. The reason is kind of silly, but maybe that's just one of those stories. But my instinct says Egypt.
All right. So my thinking behind this is honestly this obviously it's a shot in the dark. I don't know any of these 3, But knowing what I know about this podcast and the different games that we've played, I know that people reacted very weirdly to animals in different situations. And so I'm probably gonna go with the cat massacre as my answer. To
Okay.
see. I think that the Egypt one is like it sounds very plausible as well. Again, kind of in the same vein as you, where people believe that was the case. Like that's just a belief
Yeah, it's a
that
belief.
happened.
Doesn't
But
mean that it actually did
I
that.
mean, I could also believe that a Viking put himself on a. You tell me that no Viking in all history did not put himself on a catapult and pretended he could fly. You tell me that never happened?
I admire it, but I don't think they probably live about it. So, live to tell the tale. So
That's probably
unless
true.
someone wrote about him as a failed Viking space,
And
program,
maybe
however they
that's what it
phrase that,
was.
maybe. But I have my
Okay.
guess, Jacob. I want to see who's right. Give me the answers,
Yeah.
will you,
All
Leo?
right.
Where you at?
All right. All right. So the story, I'm gonna do it right now. So story
Oh,
number
so
one
you're
from
telling
round
me that?
one.
Okay,
I am this time. The
all
true
right.
story is the Great Cat Massacre. So in
Wow,
the
good job.
1730s in Paris, apprentices of a printing shop feeling resentful over the perceived mistreatment and taking issue with the neighborhood cats, um, organized a strange mock trial and subsequent killings of several cats. That's so terrible. This particular event was later named the Great Cat Massacre and has been analyzed by historians as a unique form of protest and as a lens into early modern European labor relations. That is, what a poor, unfortunate, poor cats,
Leave it to
man.
the French, man. Labor,
Oh
like
my
it's
gosh,
all in the same
dude,
vein of screw them.
that's crazy.
That makes sense. I mean, good for them, but not good for the
Innocent cats,
cats.
man.
Yeah, I don't know why the cats had to be involved, but I guess it was
Why?
symbolism in the way of being
Yeah,
pampered and left out. I don't know. They had a reason, I
interesting.
guess. But I was wrong. You were
Humans,
right.
man.
1-0.
Humans. All right, you ready for round two?
I'm ready.
All right, let's get it.
Nightly underwater jousting. A popular form of entertainment for European royalty during the 13th century was underwater jousting. Knights would face off in large, specially designed tanks using elongated lances with air pockets
Okay.
embedded into their armor to help
Oh
them float.
my.
The Great Emu Heist. In 1398, a group of thieves in England's Nottinghamshire devised a plan to distract the town's guards by releasing a horde of emus, which they had smuggled from their travels in distant lands, creating chaos and allowing them to rob the town's treasury. London's Whipping Tom. In the late 1680s, London was plagued by a mysterious figure known as Whipping Tom, who would surprise women in alleyways and spank them while shouting "Spanko" before fleeing the scene.
Oh my god. One of these is true.
They're all insane.
They're all insane.
I
See,
already know what's true. I
Do
don't
you
say
really?
no. I just have a gut instinct because
okay.
people are crazy.
Dude,
Whipping
you're
Tom
thinking it's
is- I'm
Tom.
whipping-
You're thinking it's
Tom is
Tom,
real.
dude.
Tom
You're
is
just
real.
leaning
Towards the worst in people. Yeah, Tom
Yeah.
is real, man.
to the perverts and people. Oh my gosh. Yeah. How am I supposed to believe nightly underwater jousting? Give me a break. There's no
yeah,
way.
that made me laugh out loud. I probably
do
need to
I
eat that.
do
but
I go differently than you though? Because I agree. Like I believe in people's ability. Like nothing shocks me anymore. So
Yeah.
that seems like not innocent, but like seems like something that definitely some crazy person
Yeah,
did.
dude sounds fucked. I'm assuming it's Tom, but go for B, man. We can see who's right.
Yeah. All right. I'm gonna go for the Great Emu Heist just because I love emus, and that story is a through
Yeah.
line for our podcasts. So all right, let's see what the answer is here because I'm dying to know. Okay. Here we go. True story. London's Whipping Tom. In the
Wow,
late
horrible.
1680s, London saw a series of bizarre attacks from a man who became known as Whipping Tom. This individual would surprise women in alleyways, spank them, shouting "Spanko," and
Leave
then
it
flee.
to that.
The identity
asshole.
of Whipping Tom and his motivations remained a mystery to this day.
What do you mean
Wow.
motivations? He's a sick freak.
What motivations?
Yeah, come on now. That's a funny line to put there.
Oh, wow.
That seems like a caveat line. Okay. So we're 1-1,
Yeah.
Jake. We're going into the third round.
I
1-1. How do you
know.
feel?
We just made this exciting. I like it. I like the tension, man. Third round,
This is
winner takes all.
winner takes all. And then if you win, you've won 2 in a row.
Yeah.
That'll
Well,
be your
let's
first
agree.
time,
Let's
huh? How you
agree.
feel, bud?
Just shut up. Shut up. Listen. Let's agree going into this round right now that we can't choose the same answer.
Only
There
if you
has to
don't
be a
pick
winner.
my right answer.
No, that's
Hey, just play. Let's see what Leo says
yeah,
first, and then
okay.
we'll make up the rules.
Let's do it.
The scold's fiddle. In the 18th century, disruptive or quarrelsome couples in certain European towns were made to wear a wooden yoke known as a scold's fiddle, which clamped their heads and hands together, forcing them to cooperate and find harmony. The melting crown. In ancient Mesopotamia, if a king was deemed unfit or tyrannical, he would be subjected to the punishment of the melting crown, where a crown made of thin gold would be heated and placed on the king's head, marking his dethronement and disgrace. Shoe dueling in Bavaria. In 16th century Bavaria, if 2 men had a dispute, they would settle it with a shoe duel. They'd take turns flinging their shoes at each other until one man conceded or was knocked unconscious.
Wow.
Wow.
That's how we should fight from now on.
I am so lost. I do not know. So I don't even have a gut reaction to those 3. I think I'm leaning
Really?
between the crown, melting crown, because that seems just medieval enough and like a
It
torture
seems Games of
slash
Thronesy, you know?
yeah, humiliation and you're out of here type thing. But that seems also not in line with how I think that new kings are crowned. So like do you have a new
Right.
king and you go, oh, put the old king up here. Typically the old king would die, right? Or they would, like it passes on to the lineage. You're not, unless you're dethroning
Right.
someone. I'm not sure.
It's interesting.
Shoe duel sounds
dueling,
interesting.
again,
Sounds fun. Little fun
I
guy
don't
there.
put anything past people. A shoe duel seems like it's very, very possible. But also, I'm kind of
What's
honing
the
in on
first
the
one?
scold's fiddle. So it was in the 18th century, disruptive or
Scold's
quarrelsome
fiddle?
couples. Yeah, they were made to wear a wooden yoke known as a scold's fiddle, which clamped their heads and their hands together, forcing them to cooperate and find harmony. I feel like there's a ton of medieval devices in the 18th century that's where my gut leans into, is like that was a
Yeah.
real thing. That's where I would
I
go personally.
Okay, if you're going that, I don't know that I want to go for the crown one, even though for some reason that might be. I think the shoe one would be fun. I'll lose on the shoe. Let's go for it. I'll do the shoe. I'll do the shoe
Yes.
duel, and you'll do the scolding fiddle.
See, this is where like
Watch
if
us
we had a
both be wrong.
Patreon, yeah, no, watch it be the crown. But if we had a Patreon, I would say that we need to do a shoe duel based on these rules.
We'll video it.
And we would video it and put this out because that'd
It'd be
be
pretty
super
funny.
hilarious. All right, so for the win, Jeffrey, are you ready? Let's
For
reveal the answer.
win. All right, Bob Barker.
The scold's fiddle.
Way
In
to go.
various parts of Europe, particular during the 17th and 18th centuries, the scold's bridle or scold's fiddle, so it went by both names, was a form of punishment. This device was a metal or wooden framework placed around the head with a muzzle or bit to restrain the tongue and prevent the wearer from speaking. Oh my gosh, this sounds horrific. It was typically used on individuals, often women. Oh God, I'm so sorry. Who was deemed to be nagging, gossipy, or quarrelsome.
Holy
In some
shit.
versions, the device would also clamp the hands together. Wow, that is.
My
Listen,
gosh. Leave it to
haven't
those
we done
people,
enough?
Leave it to
Haven't we done
those
enough?
that time. They really
know.
said, you know what, we're unhappy with someone. Let's create a device specifically for this XYZ reason. And it was never a good reason.
I have a theory that just like in the 1800s and 1700s in general, people were just trying to one up. Like, how could I make a worse like time for people? How can I make a worse death for someone? And they just kept like, new medieval torture device, just making it worse and worse. But
Gluttons
wow,
for
that's
punishment, man.
yeah, man.
Well, that was a good
That's
game.
So wild.
You won 2 in a row. Congratulations.
Heck yeah, winning streak.
If you've made it this far, ignore the little police siren behind me and
That was for me. That
give
was
us a
cheering for me.
review. give us a review. See, he's agreeing. This policeman is agreeing. Get on our Spotify, get on Apple Podcasts. It means a lot if you could leave us a review. Hopefully 5 stars. That'd be pretty sick.
Yeah.
Also, we have Instagram, social media, Casual X History. Jacob's coming back next week with another podcast, another story to dive into.
Heck
And
yeah.
that's all she wrote. Anything for you, Jake?
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say another thing too. Like seriously, we truly appreciate you listening all the way through and really supporting this podcast as you guys do. If there's anybody in your life, friends, family, who you think might be interested in this, please give it a share. It would mean the world to us as we're kind of growing this thing and obviously getting better and better as time goes on. But other than that, I'm just super excited for next week. I've got a really great topic that maybe I'll even tease with some stuff before it comes out next week. So I'm super excited for that.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. We'll see you next week.